Breaking news and a historic first. The Epstein survivors have banded together and they're filing a class action lawsuit against the U.S. government, the Trump administration, ultimately the Department of Justice, and Google because of the Trump administration's intentionally sloppy method it used to release the millions of pages of Epstein files required by the Epstein Transparency Act without a regard, not a whit, for the privacy rights of the victims and survivors. That's how their names got out and leaked out. And no, it's not good enough for the government to say oops and shrug its shoulders and say it was quality control problems or it was clerical errors or technical errors or whatever their excuses have been to federal judges, because there are real life victims in real life, like the victims of the Epstein scandal to begin with. Talk about getting the raw end of the stick and the deal. The Epstein survivors have not had their predators prosecuted, have not been able to recover any money from the predators in civil cases, and yet others like Google are profiting off of their identity being improperly, illegally disclosed in the by the Department of Justice. Enough is enough. That's what this class action says to me, filed up in the Northern District of California in San Francisco. I have practiced up there and handled cases up there. I think this is going to be a momentous and historic case, and I'm giving you the overview of it right here on the MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF. We'll do a little breakout also about a class action. Many people I know in our audience use the word the term class action. Let's file a class action, Popok. Let's go after the government. Here we have one, and I'll break it down for you, having handled class action cases, plaintiff and defense, about what it means. And what it means that the United States of America is a named defendant. That means they've already rejected in the last 6 months or more a claim under the Federal Tort Claim Act to resolve this case without the need for a lawsuit. Look at the Department of Justice dragging the victims back through the mud, having no care in the world for them at all. While the same Department of Justice is considering settling with Donald Trump on his tax returns being released and giving him tens of millions of dollars, that the Department of Justice, all under the control of Donald Trump, has settled apparently for $1 million with Michael Flynn, who was convicted of perjury by a special counsel in the prior administrations, and now he's getting $1 million. $5 million to Ashley Babbitt's family because she was shot and killed on Jan 6th, breaking through a door between her and a hallway into the chambers while senators and congresspeople staff were still in there counting votes. Her family's getting $5 million. So the Department of Justice, I want this to be clear, that this means the Department of Justice has not found it necessary or humane to settle with the victims early, and rather have forced them to file this lawsuit. Let me read to you from the lawsuit. By the way, you're here on Legal AF and on MeidasTouch. Hit the subscribe button on Legal AF YouTube and MeidasTouch as well. Help us to continue to grow this pro-democracy channel. We know what happened. We know that 3.1 million documents got released by the federal government under protest. And then when they did it, they waited till the last minute. And rather than doing it on a rolling basis, just did a data dump, hoping that nobody would notice how many times Donald Trump's name was mentioned in the files. This was all done as smoke and mirrors and distraction to try to, step on a news story that was negative to Donald Trump at the time or otherwise. They did not care about the victims at all. They already admitted, the Trump administration and the Department of Justice, they made mistakes and errors. And those mistakes and errors have real world and human consequences because there's people on the other end of having their personal identifying information, their PII, released to the public. And Google, according to the lawsuit, made money off of it, profited off of it. Right? Bad enough the victims are re-victimized and traumatized, but now Google's going to make money off of it. And this is off the heels of, in the last 48 hours, a cocky Google runs YouTube and Meta runs Instagram and Facebook, thought they could convince a jury in LA that they are not responsible, nor their algorithm, for sending content inappropriate to teenagers and young people. A case brought by just one young person claims that, content was targeted to her, which made her suicidal and mental health problems. She just got $9 million including punitive damages. That was just one person. This is a class action. So if they think, well, we'll just duke it out in court, yeah, maybe that's not such a great idea. Let's focus on what the allegations are. That disclosure happened, done sloppily, admitted by the government. Here's Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi admitting errors were made. Translation, people's names were outed, doxed, and put into the public domain for Google to make money off of in a search. Play the clip.
I think it was less than 1% error. Todd, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, that's right. We said from the beginning that any mistakes that were made, and there should be no mistakes. And so when you say lawyers have said something, that's not a fair question, and you know it. Because we took pains to protect victims. When when someone identified that there was a victim, we immediately pulled that document down, fixed it, and put it back up.
Immediately.
And so of course we don't ever want to do anything to re-victimize anybody that was victimized by the horrible crimes of Mr. Epstein, but we didn't to the extent that mistakes were made, and there were mistakes made because of the reasons the Attorney General just said. But when they were identified to us, we fixed them immediately.
In fact, we know about the unlawful disclosure because they had to admit it. They filed, the Department of Justice, with Judge Berman, a federal judge in New York, Judge Engelmeyer, another federal judge in New York, letters saying that errors have been made. They chalked it off to human errors and technical errors and quality control errors. Every time they made an error, another re-traumatization of one of the victims in this class action happened. And that's the reality. This complaint goes further about it being intentional on behalf of the government. In fact, here's what it says about the government doing this, not by accident, but intentional. This is paragraph 32, 33, 34 of the complaint. The United States, acting through the Department of Justice, made a deliberate policy choice to prioritize rapid, large volume disclosure over protection of the Epstein survivors' privacy, admitting that they were moving fast to comply with President Trump wanting to be transparent in this area. But the result is redactions that were incomplete, redactions and deletions that did not include the metadata underneath it so people could reconstruct who the people were, and the rest. And as a result, we now move to why Google is in the case. Because Google, as the world's predominant internet search engine, made money off of the victims' names and personal identifying information being released. They gave an example on page 11. Now, if you haven't gone to Google lately, you'll see a new component, a feature called Google AI, Artificial Intelligence Mode, sort of like a competitor of ChatGPT or OpenAI, where it sort of puts together an answer for you, searching through all of its databases and all of its artificial intelligence, using all of its artificial intelligence tools. So they tested it. I mean, the plaintiff's lawyers, they did it this way. This is on paragraph 50. Does the name, fill in the blank, they had a name, appear in the DOJ's released Epstein files? Yes, Google AI Mode responded. The name blank appears in the Jeffrey Epstein files officially released by the DOJ in early 2026. And then it goes further to say that person's name appears in multiple email addresses, and here's the email address, and that this is just ridiculous. And Google makes money and profits from this as content. They'll throw an ad on that. Maybe not for the Popok firm, but they'll throw an ad on there. Again, ka-ching, they make money, and the Epstein victims re-traumatized. As I said at the top of the hot take, they're being beaten with both ends of the stick. Their predators aren't being prosecuted by the Department of Justice. They don't have the ability to go after, they haven't been able to go after the predators on civil cases. A lot of their statute of limitations might have run from when they were children. That's two. So they haven't been able to obtain relief or justice in the form of monetary payments. And yet other people are profiting like Google. Outrageous. So the way this class action works, time for the teachable moment on class action. I've done class action work, as I've said, is a class action is a type of collective action where you yoke together a large group of people who have similar, could be identical, but definitely similar damages and injury against the same party. Rather than forcing 1,500 Epstein survivors to go file individual suits for their individual amounts, it all gets put together. You get a very good 1 or 2 plaintiffs' law firms that are skilled in class action. Shout out to the firm of Erickson, Kramer, Osborne, San Francisco, for taking the case. They get 1 or 2 or 3 what's called putative class representatives. These are people who are actual, in this case, Epstein survivors. Right now, they're listed as Jane Doe anonymously. And then you identify a class, and you have that class certified under the federal rules of civil procedure about class action work. We call it Rule 26. And you look through it, and they certify the class. And if the class gets certified, that class moves forward with the underlying claims. Here they are for violation of the Privacy Act of 1974, which is a federal statute, that the federal government cannot release your personal information without your permission. That happened. There's no exception because of the Epstein Act. For instance, Congress could have carved out a protection that this is an exception to the Privacy Act. No, that didn't happen. Probably Epstein Files doesn't mention the Privacy Act that way. There's also a violation of negligent infliction of emotional distress, of negligence, of disclosure of private facts publicly. There's violation of California's unfair competition law against Google, that they're making money off this illegally disclosed information. Invasion of privacy we talked about. So first step is going to be briefing and an argument about putting the class together. They're all similarly situated as far as I'm concerned. They all have a similar claim. There's not, the damages may be slightly different. How much emotional distress, how much financial loss, but the damages are basically the same. I think that gets yoked together. And if the government doesn't settle and Google doesn't settle, then let's go to trial. Well, let's go to trial. And if Google wants to roll the dice again, they did it in California, in Los Angeles, just in the last 48 hours, let them do it all over again. So if you want to read this 29-page complaint, I'll put it up on Legal AF Substack under Filings AF for paid members. And we'll continue to follow it. I'm going to get Lisa Phillips, who's a friend and client of mine and an Epstein survivor herself, to come on and talk about this class action case as well over on Legal AF YouTube channel. In the meantime, hit the subscribe button and become a member. Great news for, I don't think people remembered. I certainly almost forgot. 5th year anniversary, not just of the birthday party for Meidas, it's the 5th year anniversary of a show called Legal AF, the podcast. And as a result, we're running a sale for Legal AF Substack for paid members. Until my next report, this is Michael. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.